such a time as this.
And welcome back to For Such a Time as This, the place where there is no such thing as a silent witness. We have transitioned to our own website. Hopefully you guys can go there so that when YouTube or other platforms deem us no longer worthy to be on their website, you can always keep in contact with the ministry. For such a time as this today, for such a time as this today, we are going to talk about some very interesting things. It blows my mind, the critical race theory and all the things pertaining to it. And I have with us today Professor Abigail Ruth, who will be represented by her Barbie emoji up here at the corner. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hi, Pastor James.
Abigail Ruth. So we're going to talk about, how you doing, Abigail? We're going to talk about this thing, this book, let me show it to you. This book called White Fragility, written by Robin DiAngelo, and if you didn't know anything else, the foreword is by Michael Eric Dyson. Oh my goodness. But it's White Fragility. Why is it so hard? Look at the subscript. Why is it so hard for white people to talk about racism? Why is it so hard for white people to talk about racism? And in that book, this book is so influential, right? Abigail, I think it is, it's like required reading at large amounts of universities. Am I wrong? Or?
Yeah, I can't comment on that for sure. I suspect that it is. It's kind of like the Bible for critical race theory for lay people. Essentially. And this Robin DiAngelo is a diversity trainer, so she gets paid the big bucks to go from company to company, educating everybody on on racism, basically.
And when you say educating, telling white people why they're so evil when it comes to racism.
Why they're racist, yes.
Yes, why they're racist. So
or how they're racist.
Yeah, you just can't help yourself.
Because there's no question. She even says, all white people are racist. The only question is, in what ways? Yeah. So there you go.
All right, here's the clip that we're going to sort of react to. Here it is.
And so we really need to get rid of this. And again, if you are white and at any point tonight in my talk, you start to feel defensive or angry, see if it isn't that you can't let go of this definition. And if you can't let go of this definition, I agree with you. I'm saying, I'm insulting you. I mean, if this is what you think racism is, and I'm saying you have racist patterns, then I agree that I've offended you. But this is not the definition I'm using. The other thing that...
Abby?
Okay, well, that may not be the definition that Ms. DiAngelo is using, but that is the definition, and that is the definition known to probably 99% of Americans, both black and white, that racism, it means ignorant, bigoted, prejudiced, and mean-spirited. Saying that, and her premise, one of her central premises in the book, I did read the whole book, is that all white people are racist. So it's kind of like saying all white people are evil, but don't worry, because evil doesn't mean what you think it means, because I've redefined it.
That word you think it means, I don't think it means what you think it means. That's what she's saying, right? All white people are evil, but don't worry, evil doesn't mean what you think it means. So what does it mean?
Let me give you, they use 1,000 words to define their vocabulary, which is, I think, always a hint when somebody is trying to pull something over your eyes when they don't speak clearly. Yeah. Okay, so this critical race theory definition of racism is white people's collective prejudice backed by legal authority and institutional control. Racism is a system that is no longer dependent on the attitudes and intentions of individual people. Racism requires social and institutional power.
So you could be a racist and totally unintentional,
right?
Be a hardened racist. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Which is why she says, don't be offended that I call you a racist. Now, she introduces this definition under the heading, quote, "We have a simplistic understanding of racism." And I would say, no, we don't have a simplistic understanding of racism, but critical race theory has changed the definition of racism, but they still want to use the word.
And from a Christian perspective, if you use racism and if you remove it from the individual to a system, now it's the quote-unquote system that is evil. It's the system that sins, but not the individual. Is that what she's saying?
Okay, so it's the system that's the problem, but then it's incumbent upon white people to do what she calls do the work, quote unquote, to interrupt the system. So even so
the system is the white people. Otherwise, if the system is racist, ask the system to change. Don't ask the individual white people to change.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point.
Or the white people make up the system, which is race. These liberals.
Go
out into the ether and ask the system to repent, and don't ask the white individuals to repent.
And that's the other thing, because she's trying to encourage white people to do the work to interrupt the system.
Yeah.
And it's called anti-racist work. And so if it's still a moral judgment, because if you don't, quote unquote, do the work, well, then you're a really bad white person. You're racist anyway. Okay, whether you, no matter what you do, you're fragile if you. Well, we'll get into that later. But anyway, so it's still a moral judgment, because if this is such a neutral thing, then why do the work?
Because she's claiming it's not a moral judgment, right? Don't be offended. It's not
don't
a moral judgment.
Don't be offended that I call you a racist.
Yeah. It's not a moral judgment. And so you have very few Americans know there's any other definition for these words, right?
So exactly. So that's a real problem when we start saying that all white people are racist.
Yeah.
What do most Americans think when they hear that? They think that the white Americans are going to think you're calling them ignorant, bigoted, prejudiced, and mean-spirited, and maybe you can tell me what the Black Americans are going to think.
Same. So, and a large majority of blacks are going to rejoice that, now the white man has now agreed, but we've known all along. Racist.
Exactly. And if racism is a system, then why call white people racist?
Because the white people make up the system. That's why.
I don't
understand how that book is so great. I mean, it seems stupid to me. I don't know.
I don't even know how people can get through it, but clearly they have. Yeah. And so my question is, and let's just go through a few other words.
Yeah.
White supremacy. Okay. White supremacy is by her definition, it's just, they say that America is a white supremacist culture, right?
Yeah.
Because whites reign supreme. When most people hear white supremacy, they think, it conjures up visions of people in white robes with pointy hats, sheets, standing next to a bonfire.
Ropes and trees.
Exactly.
Yes. White
privilege has connotations of snooty, uncaring arrogance. White fragility implies weakness and thin-skinned sensitivity.
Yeah, that's what it means.
And she says specifically that fragility is not applicable to any other group. Isn't that interesting?
Oh, really?
Page 113.
Page 113, the fragility is not applicable to any other group.
Only whites.
Oh, really?
Now, that's not racist, right?
No.
And like microaggression, we've been hearing this for years. And whites are always guilty. They're guilty of all these microaggressions, saying things that they're not necessarily... that are offensive to, say, blacks.
Yeah.
They might not even realize that they're doing it. But even using the word microaggression implies an aggressor.
Of course.
So what?
That's the same people that's fragile, the fragility people, right?
Yeah, we're fragile, we're privileged, we love our white supremacist culture, we're trying to maintain it.
But she's making no moral judgment, right?
That's right.
Oh,
so
okay.
we shouldn't feel defensive.
Okay, all right.
So my question is, if you're trying to improve race relations,
that's what she says.
Well, yeah, that's the point, right?
Okay.
Why on earth would you make up these kinds of words, and why would you use these kind of words?
Help
me out.
You know what? If I was in the flesh, a young 17, 18-year-old white male, and I'm looking at this book, listening to what she's saying, listening now to what Joe Biden is saying, that his focus is going to be on the minority small businesses. 17, 18 in the flesh, I might not have been a racist last year or the year before, but doggone, you're sure pushing me towards that. If what I am hearing is that because the color of my skin, I'm an aggressor, a frail, privileged, I'm a supremacist, ignorant, bigoted, man, forget you.
Right.
I would be shocked if there are not more white racists today than there were 2 years ago. No, I wouldn't be surprised.
Exactly.
I wouldn't be surprised. And 17, 18-year-old warm-blooded male with the testosterone, it's not going to be microaggression. It's going to be the macroaggression, okay? But they're creating this. They're creating this. So critical race, CRT definitions, she says, or what now? Critical.
Well, basically they've come up with with definitions for all these things. Well, of course, racists already have well-established definitions. We know, everyone knows what they are. So when people hear her talk, they assume the classic definition.
Correct.
Okay, but then they make up these other phrases like white supremacy, white privilege, white fragility. Those are more created, more recent things, but they all imply white bad. Yeah. Every single one.
You have, if they were neutral in the book, if they were neutral, then there would be no reason to encourage white people to quote unquote do the work. If she's not making a moral judgment and it's neutral, then why do anything? Laissez le bon temps rouler. Let the good times roll. Why change? Why change? And so the last thing we have here is talking out both sides of her mouth. I mean, that seems to be what she does from the first paragraph on from the book.
She says she's saying that white people are bad, yet she's denying that is what she is saying. The vocabulary itself that she uses speaks volumes, that critical race theory speaks volumes. So this is just one problem with this book. We plan to maybe do just little segments on other problems in the future. As
we bring you the #1 book on college campuses, White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo, looking at it through a biblical lens. Thank you, Abigail.
You're welcome, Pastor James.
How on earth do people fall for this stuff?
For such a time as this,